From the outside, our life was a dream. Friends envied us, neighbors admired us, strangers complimented us. Mark had that easy kind of charm, the kind that could disarm anyone with a smile, make people believe he was the man every woman wished to marry. And I played my part too. I was the supportive wife with the glowing smile, always standing at his side, always ready with the right word or the soft laugh that confirmed our picture-perfect union. Together we were flawless, or at least that's what everyone believed. I believed it too in the beginning. In those first months I thought I had found safety in him, security wrapped in affection, a steady anchor in a world that always felt unsteady. But even then, something lingered at the edges, faint cracks beneath the polish, shadows stretching too far to be ignored. Mark's late nights started as harmless explanations. Meetings, deadlines, work dinners. He always had a reason. I wanted to trust him, and so I did. But there was something in the way he said it, too practiced, too casual, like a line rehearsed until it sounded real. The first time he didn't come home until morning. I sat awake on the couch, the clock ticking in the silence, each second stretching like a blade across my skin. When he finally walked through the door, smiling like nothing had happened, I asked where he had been. His answer came smooth, easy. "Overnight conference call," he said, dropping his tie onto the table. But who hosts a conference call at midnight? Who comes home with that faint trace of perfume clinging to his shirt, the kind that doesn't belong to me? I told myself not to push, not to accuse. Maybe love is just another word for ignoring the questions you're too afraid to ask. So I poured him coffee, kissed his cheek, and swallowed my doubts whole. Yet silence only made the questions grow louder. His eyes didn't linger on me the way they once had. His touch felt rehearsed, like a man following steps to a dance he no longer wanted to perform. Sometimes I would catch him staring off into nothing, lips curved in a faint smile, as though he was living another life in his head. A life where I didn't exist. I should have seen it then. I should have known that the mask we both wore would not hold forever. But love blinds you, and I clung to the illusion because the truth was too heavy to face. That night, as I lay awake beside him, his breathing steady while my thoughts spiraled, I realized the silence between us was no longer empty. It was hiding something dangerous. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing day. It wasn't the kind of silence born from comfort, the kind couples fall into after years together. No, this silence had weight like a storm gathering, waiting to break. Mark used to fill our evenings with stories. He would talk about clients, colleagues, his ambitious plans for the future. Now, dinners passed in near silence, broken only by the sound of silverware against plates. I tried to start conversations about work, about the neighbors, even about the weather, but his answers were short, distracted. His eyes fixed on something far away. It wasn't just his words that disappeared. His touch vanished too. Nights that once ended in closeness became nights of cold distance. He turned away from me in bed, his back stiff, his body a wall I could no longer climb. When I reached out, my hand met emptiness, as though love itself had slipped out of reach. And then there was the phone, always in his pocket, always face down when he set it on the table. A glowing screen he guarded more fiercely than his own heart. I noticed how quickly he snatched it up whenever it buzzed, retreating into another room with a muttered excuse. At night he locked himself in the bathroom, water running to mask his voice, the faint murmur of whispered words leaking through the door. The phone became a symbol, a black mirror reflecting all my fears. I told myself not to pry, not to become the kind of wife who spies, but every lock, every whispered laugh, every sudden end to a call when I walked in, it all chipped away at me piece by piece. One evening, I asked, my voice quiet but sharp, "Why the lock, Mark? Since when do we keep secrets from each other?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at me with that cool detachment I had come to dread, then forced a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "It's just work, Olivia. Always work. Don't make something out of nothing," but it wasn't nothing. It was everything. That lock was a wall between us, a line I wasn't meant to cross. And deep down, I knew that beyond it lay the truth I was too afraid to face. Mark's phone became an invisible wall between us. But it wasn't until the night he mentioned a trip that I truly felt the ground shift. We were in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. when he casually dropped it into conversation. "I'll be in Boston next week, meetings. Won't be back until Thursday." His tone was rehearsed, practiced in its calm. I forced a smile and nodded, though something in his delivery felt too polished, like he had said the line 100 times in his head before releasing it into the air. When he left, suitcase in hand, I told myself not to question it, but the silence of the house clawed at me. Every shadow stretched longer. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like truth trying to crawl free. On the second day, while tidying his study, I found it, a receipt, folded and discarded beneath a stack of files. Not from Boston, not from any airport. It was from a hotel downtown, just 20 minutes away. A luxury suite charged 2 nights ago. My pulse thundered as I scanned the details. The receipt wasn't an error, it was proof. I kept it hidden until he returned. That evening he walked through the door, smile intact, suitcase dragging behind him. He kissed my cheek, asked about dinner, and carried on as though the world were unchanged. But my world was no longer intact. Later that night, as he loosened his tie, I pulled the receipt from my pocket and laid it on the table between us. "Boston?" I asked, my voice sharp, brittle. "Or the Grand Hilton?" For the briefest moment his eyes flickered, a crack in the mask. But then he laughed, actually laughed. "You went through my things?" he said smoothly, lifting the paper as though it were nothing. "Olivia, do you hear yourself? You sound paranoid." "Paranoid?" My voice rose. "You lied to me, Mark. You weren't in Boston. You were here at this hotel." He stepped closer, his expression turning cold. "Do you know what it feels like to be constantly accused? To be treated like a criminal in your own home? Maybe I should ask myself why I stay if you're going to make up stories in your head." Gaslight. Sharp, deliberate, crushing. My certainty faltered, even with the receipt still clutched in my hand. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind a storm. The evidence told one truth, but his voice, calm, steady, commanding, told another. And in that silence I wondered if I was losing not only my husband, but also myself. I thought I was losing my mind. Mark's voice had been so convincing, his calm so unshakable, that even with the receipt still tucked in my drawer, I doubted myself. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe he was right. Maybe love was just trust, blind and unquestioning. But then came the knock. It was late afternoon, sunlight fading into shadows across the porch. I opened the door expecting a delivery or a neighbor. Instead, a woman stood there. Her hair was tied back hastily, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes restless as though she had run a long way to get here. "Are you Olivia?" she asked, her voice trembling but urgent. "Yes," I answered cautiously, gripping the doorframe. She took a deep breath. "My name is Rachel. I need to talk to you. It's about your husband." The world tilted. My first instinct was to slam the door, to protect the fragile illusion I had been clinging to. But something in her gaze stopped me. Desperation, fear, and a strange kind of knowing. "I don't know what you think you know," I said, my voice sharp. Her laugh was bitter, broken. "I know more than you want to believe. Mark, he isn't who you think he is. I loved him once, and it nearly destroyed me." The words cut deep. I wanted to deny them, to call her a liar, a bitter ex seeking revenge. But her tone carried the weight of lived experience, a wound still bleeding beneath the surface. "Why are you here?" I demanded. "Because I don't want what happened to me to happen to you." She glanced over her shoulder, lowering her voice. "He lies, he manipulates. He makes you doubt yourself until you don't know which way is up. And when you start seeing the truth, he'll do anything to keep you quiet." My pulse quickened. Memories of the locked phone, the hotel receipt, the coldness in Mark's eyes flooding back all at once. Before I could respond, the sound of tires crunching on the driveway made Rachel's eyes widen. She grabbed my hand, pressing a folded slip of paper into my palm. "Read this when you're alone," she whispered. Then she was gone, slipping down the street just as Mark's car pulled in. "Who was that?" he asked casually as he walked through the door. His smile practiced, his eyes scanning mine too carefully. "A neighbor," I lied, tucking the note into my pocket before he could notice. That night, when the house was quiet and his breathing slow beside me, I unfolded Rachel's note under the lamplight. Her words were hurried, jagged, desperate. Don't trust him. He's not the man you think. Check what he hides. Protect yourself. I stared at the message until the letters blurred, and for the first time, I felt the walls of my marriage closing in. Rachel's warning lingered like smoke in the air, invisible yet suffocating. Her note burned in my pocket, daring me to face what I already feared. Check what he hides. The words echoed in my mind until I could no longer ignore them. So one quiet afternoon, when Mark left for work, I stepped into his study. It was his domain, the one room he insisted on keeping private. The blinds were half drawn, dust motes swirling in the slant of sunlight. His cologne clung to the air, sharp and oppressive. At first, everything appeared ordinary. Papers stacked neatly, shelves lined with books in perfect order. But then my gaze landed on the mahogany desk. A drawer on the side gleamed with a small brass lock. My heart quickened. This had to be it. I searched through the room until I found a tiny key tucked inside a box of pens. My hands trembled as I slid it into the lock. The click of it opening was deafening. Inside were envelopes and folders, neatly organized yet unsettling in their contents. Bank accounts under unfamiliar names. Credit cards issued to identities I had never heard of. Driver's licenses, all with Mark's face, but each one attached to a different name. Richard, James, Peter. Then came the photographs. Dozens of them, tucked into a leather folder. Women I didn't recognize, captured in candid smiles. At cafes, in parks, at airports. They weren't family snapshots. They were trophies, collected moments from lives I didn't belong to. A chill crawled up my spine as I laid the pictures across the desk. Who were they? Lovers? Strangers he followed? Victims? The question made my stomach turn. I shoved the documents back into the drawer, relocked it, and forced myself to steady my breathing. But I couldn't erase the images now burned into my mind. The man I had married wasn't just hiding a lie. He was living multiple lives, each more dangerous than the last. That night I smiled at him across the dinner table, nodding at his small talk. But inside, fear took root. Rachel was right. Something was very, very wrong. The drawer haunted me. Every time I looked at Mark, I saw the shadow of those documents, the false names, the photographs of women I couldn't place. Rachel's warning gnawed at me, louder now, refusing to be ignored. Check what he hides. Protect yourself. So I did. Late at night, when Mark's steady breathing filled the bedroom, I sat in the glow of my laptop, typing names, dates, anything I could remember from the papers I had seen. At first, the searches led to nothing. But then, one by one, fragments began to appear. Jessica Myers, 28, reported missing 3 years ago after leaving a corporate event. Lisa Tran, 31, last seen outside a downtown bar 2 summers back. Samantha Clark, 25, vanished after checking into a hotel for a business retreat. Their faces stared back at me from old news articles and missing person bulletins. My stomach turned. These weren't just women in photographs. They were women who had disappeared. Women who looked too much like the ones in Mark's folder. I pulled out a notebook and began to write, mapping dates and locations. The overlaps were undeniable. Business trips Mark had taken, nights he claimed to be away, receipts I'd stumbled upon, all intersected with the times these women had vanished. The deeper I dug, the more the pattern revealed itself. Mark wasn't living double lives, he was weaving a web. Identities, accounts, lies, and somehow these women were caught in it. Every discovery tightened the dread inside me. I thought of the way he watched me sometimes, his gaze sharp and assessing, as if weighing something invisible. I remembered the cold rejection in bed, the locked phone, the gaslighting words meant to twist my reality. And then came the most chilling realization of all. Every woman who disappeared had been tied to him in some way. A co-worker, a neighbor, a supposed friend, which meant that being his wife didn't make me safe. It made me the closest target. I slammed my laptop shut, my hands trembling. For a long moment I sat in the dark, the only sound the thud of my own heartbeat. By morning I had hidden the notebook deep in my closet, terrified he might find it. I forced myself to smile over breakfast, to ask about his day as though nothing had changed. But inside, my fear was no longer just suspicion. It was certainty. Mark wasn't simply lying to me. He was dangerous, And if Rachel's warning was right, then uncovering the truth meant I might already be too close to the edge. I couldn't hold the weight of silence anymore. Every discovery in my notebook, every face I had seen staring back from those missing person reports. They screamed for a confrontation. Fear urged me to stay quiet, but fear also told me I was running out of time, so I asked him. It was evening, the golden glow of the setting sun spilling across the dining table. Mark poured himself a drink, the ice clinking in the glass, his movements relaxed, unhurried. My heart pounded as I slid one of the photographs I'd copied onto the table between us. Who is she? My voice trembled but carried enough force to shatter the silence. Mark's eyes flicked to the photograph, then back to me. For the briefest moment, his mask cracked. A flicker of annoyance, maybe even recognition. But then it was gone, replaced by his calm, practiced smile. "Ah," he said smoothly, swirling his drink. "You've been snooping again." "Don't dismiss this," I snapped. "I know about the receipts, the fake names, the women who went missing. Stop lying to me, Mark. Who are you, really?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me as though I were the one on trial. Then he sighed, almost theatrically. "If you must know, affairs, Olivia, mistakes, nothing more. I'm not proud of them, but every man slips. I hid them to protect you." The words hit me like shards of glass. Affairs. As if betrayal could be reduced to something so trivial, so forgivable. "You expect me to believe this?" My voice rose. "That's all this is, affairs? What about the missing women?" His smile faded into something colder. "You're letting your imagination run wild. You're fragile, Olivia. Always have been. And now you're inventing monsters because you're too afraid to face yourself." The room seemed to close in. His calm was more terrifying than any outburst. He wasn't denying enough to reassure me. He was twisting the truth just enough to make me doubt my own sanity. In that moment, I understood. I wasn't just betrayed. I was trapped, bound to a man who could lie with ease and make me question my own reality. And as I forced a hollow smile across the table, I knew I needed help. The night after our confrontation, I felt the walls of the house press in closer. The silence heavier, the shadows sharper. Mark moved around me with the same cold ease, smiling when he needed to. But his eyes lingered too long, as if he knew I was slipping out of his control. I was drowning in doubt when the call came. "Mrs. Whitmore?" The voice was steady, low. "This is Detective Lawson. I need to see you. It's about your husband." My blood ran cold. For a moment I considered hanging up, but curiosity and fear braided together, pulling me in. We met the next morning in a quiet cafe, far from home. Lawson was in his 40s, plain suit, eyes sharp but compassionate. He slid a card across the table, leaning forward so no one else could hear. "You're not safe, Olivia," he said. "Mark Whitmore has been under investigation for years. Fraud, money laundering, identity theft. And possibly worse," my breath caught. "Worse?" Lawson's jaw tightened. "Several women connected to him have vanished. Rachel among them. We've had leads, but never enough to bring him down. He's clever. He leaves no trace. But you," he fixed his eyes on me, "you live with him. You've seen things, haven't you?" Images flooded my mind. The receipts, the locked drawer, the photographs of women I couldn't name. I wanted to scream them all at once, to empty the nightmare onto the table between us. But fear clenched my throat. "If I talk to you and he finds out," my voice shook. "You'll be in danger," Lawson finished, blunt but honest. "But silence won't save you either. Men like him escalate. It's only a matter of time." The cafe noise blurred around me. People laughing, spoons clinking. Life going on as if the world hadn't just cracked open. I gripped my cup to stop my hands from trembling. Lawson's tone softened. "If you choose to help us, we can protect you. But it has to be your choice. Understand the risk before you decide." I nodded, but my chest was heavy with dread. Because deep down, I knew, risk or not, I had already crossed the line. Detective Lawson's warning followed me home like a shadow I couldn't shake. Every word echoed in my mind, "You're not safe. Men like him escalate." I tried to steady myself, but the house was already thick with tension. Mark's smile was too sharp, his movements too controlled, as though he sensed the shift inside me. That evening, the knock came. 3 sharp raps at the door, too familiar, too urgent. My heart lurched. When I opened it, Rachel stood there, her face pale, her eyes fierce with desperation. "You need to leave him," she hissed. "Olivia, he's dangerous." But she never finished. Mark appeared behind me, his expression snapping from casual calm to cold fury in an instant. "You again?" he growled. Rachel tried to push past me, her voice rising. "She deserves to know the truth. You can't keep hiding what you've done." What happened next unfolded in a blur of violence. Mark lunged, shoving me aside as he seized Rachel by the arm. She fought back, clawing at him, her screams filling the house. He slammed her against the wall, his hand clamped around her throat. "Stop!" I screamed, frozen between terror and disbelief. But he didn't stop. His face was twisted, unrecognizable, his eyes dark with something far beyond anger. Rachel struggled, gasping for breath, her hands flailing until she struck a lamp. It crashed to the floor, glass shattering, sparks flickering. In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of something metallic in Mark's hand. I couldn't tell if it was hers or his. And then the sound, a sickening thud that silenced everything. Rachel collapsed, blood spilling across the hardwood floor in a slow, spreading pool. The crimson stain glistened under the broken lamplight, a grotesque mirror of the life draining from her body. I stood paralyzed, phone clutched in my hand but useless, my body refusing to move. My mind screamed at me to run, to call for help, but all I could do was stare at the blood creeping toward my feet. Mark straightened, his chest heaving, his shirt splattered red. He turned to me slowly, and in his eyes there was no trace of the man I once loved. No remorse, no hesitation, only calculation, as if he were already deciding whether I should be the next name in his collection of vanished women. In that moment, the mask was gone, and the monster beneath was all that remained. The house reeked of iron, the floor still stained with Rachel's blood. I sat on the couch, hands trembling, phone hidden beneath a cushion. Mark paced the living room like a storm contained within four walls, muttering, shouting, unraveling. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he roared, slamming his fist against the wall. "She forced me, Olivia, just like the others. Always pushing, always prying, never satisfied." My thumb brushed the record button. The device vibrated faintly, silent witness to the monster revealing himself. He kept pacing, his voice rising in waves. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I enjoyed it? No, I gave them everything, and still they turned on me. What was I supposed to do? Let them ruin me? Let them take everything I built?" Fragments, half confessions spilling out between justifications. His rage wasn't just about Rachel. It was about all of them. Jessica, Lisa, the nameless women whose faces still haunted me from the photographs. I kept my eyes lowered, feigning fear, though it wasn't feigned at all. "Mark," I whispered, "please, just stop." But my plea only fueled him. He stopped pacing, turning to me with a wild, fractured smile. "You don't understand, Olivia. You never did. I kept you because you're different. You're loyal. You're mine. Do you hear me? Mine." The words struck like chains. But behind my terror, a new resolve hardened. Every sentence, every slip of his tongue was captured in the tiny device humming beneath me. His breathing slowed, rage burning into exhaustion. He finally sank into the armchair, running a blood-stained hand through his hair. "We'll fix this," he muttered. "No one will know. We just move on, start fresh. Like before." I nodded faintly, masking the disgust rising in my throat. "Yes, Mark, like before, but there was no going back. Not after what I had seen, what I had heard. The vows we once exchanged, for better or worse, till death do us part, were no longer promises. They were battleground lines." That night, as Mark finally drifted into uneasy sleep, I slipped into the hallway, clutching the recording close to my chest. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing to fight back. The recording never left my side. I carried it in my pocket like a lifeline, a small device holding the weight of every secret Mark had tried to bury. When I placed it in Detective Lawson's hands, I felt both relief and terror. Relief that someone else finally heard the truth. Terror that Mark would soon know I had betrayed him. Lawson listened in silence, his jaw tightening as Mark's voice filled the room. The rants, the half-confessions, the fragments of rage that could no longer be denied. When the recording ended, Lawson met my eyes. "This is it," he said quietly. This is enough. The arrest came swiftly. Mark was taken from our home in handcuffs, his expression eerily calm as flashing lights bathed the street. Neighbors gathered on lawns, whispering, pointing, their envy and admiration dissolving into shock. I watched from the doorway, numb as the man I once called my husband was led into the back of a squad car. The trial that followed became a spectacle. Newspapers plastered his face on front pages, the double life of Mark Whitmore. Reporters dug into every corner of his past, each revelation darker than the last. Fraud, identity theft, affairs, missing women. A web of deceit that reached farther than I had ever imagined. In the courtroom, the truth unfolded piece by piece. The photographs from his locked drawer, the false identities, the bank records, all laid bare under the sterile lights. And then came my recording. His voice echoed through the room, dripping with arrogance and fury. The mask finally torn away, I sat on the witness stand, my hands shaking as I described the nights of silence, the lies, the gaslighting that had chipped away at my sanity. Mark sat across from me, smirking, his gaze never leaving mine. Even in chains, he tried to control me, to remind me that I had once belonged to him. The jury listened. The world listened. And when the verdict was read, guilty, the room exhaled as one. Justice had been served, but justice is not healing. It does not erase the images of blood on the floor. The echo of his voice declaring me his. It does not silence the nightmares or the hollow ache where love used to live. I left the courtroom with victory pressed against grief. The world now knew Mark for who he truly was, but I carried the scars of living beside him. The cost of truth had been everything I once believed in: love, trust, safety. And yet beneath the weight of it all, I knew I had chosen survival. The verdict had been read, the gavel struck, and the world seemed to move on. Mark was no longer mine, no longer anyone's. The cameras followed his transfer to prison. The headlines dissected his lies. But in the quiet corners of my life, I carried something heavier than justice. I carried silence. The house became a mausoleum. His absence filled the rooms more than his presence ever had. Every chair, every photo frame, every shadow on the wall reminded me of the man I once believed in. Some nights I swore I could still hear his footsteps in the hall, the jingle of his keys on the counter, the sharp click of his phone locking shut. Ghosts of routine haunted me more than the memory of his crimes. I tried to find comfort in the small rituals: making coffee in the morning, opening the curtains to let in light, writing in a journal the things I could never say aloud. But no ritual could erase the scars of betrayal. I had slept beside a stranger. I had loved a mask. The vows we once exchanged replayed endlessly in my mind. For better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part, I whispered them to myself sometimes, as if testing their weight. How naive I had been to believe love was a shield. It had been a prison, and the locks were invisible until it was too late. The ultimate betrayal wasn't the blood on the floor, or the lies etched into receipts and photographs. It wasn't even the women who had vanished, though their faces still haunted me in quiet moments. No, the ultimate betrayal was the illusion itself, the belief that I was loved, that I was safe, that the man who held my hand in front of the world wasn't sharpening a knife behind his back. People called me brave, a survivor. They told me I had done the right thing, that I had saved myself. But survival is not victory. It is waking up in the middle of the night to the echo of a voice that once whispered devotion, and now only breathes menace in memory. It is learning to live with silence and pretending it feels like peace, and yet in that silence, I found something unexpected. Freedom. Fragile, trembling, imperfect. But mine. For the first time in years, I could walk out the front door without pretending. I could breathe without watching his face for permission. I could live without wondering what mask he would wear next. The scars would remain. The echoes would never fully fade. But as I stood on the porch one final time, watching the night sky stretch vast and unbroken above me, I understood that silence no longer belonged to him. It belonged to me.